Mercedes started the 2019 F1 season winning the first 8 races on the bounce. But in the 8 that followed, they've only won 3. So here to work out why that is and explain it to us, hopefully, is Ed Straw and Ben Anderson. Ed, Toto Wolff has recently said that Mercedes has backed off on its development with the 2019 car. So is that the simple explanation for this turnaround?
No, I don't think it is. I think it could apply to the fact they won't be able to fight back quite as strongly as they might had they been in a real championship fight to the end of the season. But this stretches back to the Germany upgrade, which didn't give them the performance they hoped. It also made the car a little bit harder to get the best out of in qualifying. And what we've seen in recent races, Sochi, slight exception, but the 3 races before that, Ferrari had the edge in qualifying, Mercedes had the fastest race car, but could not gain the track position. So I think it's basically that they've got a slightly harder car for Saturdays, can't get track position, plus Ferrari's improvement adds up to a bigger struggle.
That's a key point, isn't it, Ben? We have to look at the role Mercedes' rivals have played in their change of fortunes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Ferrari should and could have won each of the 4 races we've had since the summer break. Partly that's track specific, Spa and Monza with the long straights were always going to suit Ferrari's powerful engine package and slippery car. And then the Singapore upgrade they bought seems to have finally nailed the problems they've had with the front wing and the grip through the corners. They've been trying to nail this problem over several races. They had a Spain upgrade that Mattia Binotto said was a disappointment on the aero side. They had a new front wing in France, which they backtracked from, and it seems that Singapore, they finally understood their car properly and how to get a bit more from it. But even allowing for all of that, Ferrari could have won half of the races this year had they just operated the car they did have properly. They've thrown away victories in Bahrain through unreliability, in Baku through qualifying crash. They could have won in Canada if Vettel hadn't been penalised, and they probably should have won in Germany too before Leclerc crashed in the rain. So what we're seeing in the second half of the season is Mercedes rivals getting their act together, but unfortunately Mercedes are just far too far down the road.
And obviously Red Bull played a part in that as well, more before the summer break than since.
Yeah, absolutely. They started the season on the back foot. They didn't really quite have the understanding of their new package. Got on top of it a bit quicker than Ferrari did, and we saw Max Verstappen taking it to Lewis in Hungary, and he could have won that race had Pierre Gasly backed him up better. Obviously he had wins earlier in the season as well, but they were better than Mercedes in Singapore as well. Maybe having a slight dip now, actually, Red Bull, but we'll see if they can pick that up in the second half of the season as well. And Mercedes, with more challenges, they are going to struggle to assert, the same kind of performance that they had in the first half of the season.
Ed, going back to what Wolff said, even if we're dismissing that as the real explanation for this turnaround in fortunes, is that a worry for next year? We've got stable regulations, but could we be in another situation where Mercedes is the team that can hit the ground running because it got so far ahead this year and could turn the taps off earlier than everyone else?
It's never a bad thing to get the championship effectively won earlier, because then you can relax a bit. You don't necessarily have to take the really short-term strategic decisions with the way you develop. So it's not ideal for the rest, but as you say, no regulation changes. This is effectively a 2-year window. They're almost continuous projects. Yes, a team like Mercedes will make lots and lots and lots of changes, but it's still kind of one step after the other. It's not a brand new car. So I don't think that's a situation like if this was going into this year or going into 2017 or 2014, that would be a massive, massive weapon. I think the thing that people should be more fearful of with Mercedes is just how good the team is. We talk about their recent struggles, but they're hardly big struggles, are they? They're just not winning every race all of a sudden. Whereas if you look back at the start of the season, they couldn't put a foot wrong. Every decision was right. They just smashed it through the early races. The testing approach was correct, even though they didn't really get the best out of the car until they got to Melbourne. They smashed a huge upgrade on it in Spain, which just ground the opposition into even more of a pulp than they already were. So this is a formidable team, and we have to pick out these occasions where they're doing badly, in inverted commas. They're still doing pretty well.
They've still been really close in those races where they have been defeated as well, haven't they?
3 of the last 4 races, the faster car in the race than Ferrari. Just couldn't get track position.
Yeah, it's a really good point Ed makes about Mercedes form still being strong even if they've checked out of this championship, if you like. They're going to need to be outscored by something like 33, 34 points a race to be overturned in the Constructors' Championship. That isn't going to happen. That buys them more time to look at some of the weaknesses, if you can call them weaknesses, in their current package and try and bring those solutions for next year's car. The only concern would probably be Ferrari now being on the right trajectory. The regulations are stable. They didn't change a huge amount going into this year. So it all depends on how much low-hanging fruit there still is and how much advantage you can buy yourself from diverting resource early to next year's car. Ferrari will be hoping that the big step they've made in Singapore will carry through to next year's car, and that any time Mercedes has bought itself by backing off, if you like, this year won't pay so much dividends in 2020.